Good morning. Thanks for joining us on Storytime for Kids. You can find us online at storytime.cool. You can also subscribe on YouTube at Stories for Kids. And now, Frog and Toad are friends. A lost button. Toad and Frog went for a long, long walk. They walked across a large meadow. They walked in the woods, and they walked along a river. At last, they went back home to Toad's house. "Oh, drat," said Toad. "Not only do my feet hurt, but I have lost one of the buttons on my jacket." "Don't worry," said Frog. "We'll go back to all the places where we walked, and we will soon find your button." So they walked back to the large meadow and began to look for the button in the tall grass. "Here's your button," cried Frog. "That is not my button," said Toad. "That button is black. My button was white." Toad put the black button in his pocket. A sparrow flew down. "Excuse me," said the sparrow. "Did you lose a button? Because I found one." "That is not my button," said Toad. "That button has 2 holes. My button had 4 holes." Toad put the button with 2 holes in his pocket. They went back to the woods and looked on the dark, dark paths. "Here's your button," said Frog. "That is not my button," cried Toad. "That button is small. My button was big." But Toad put the small button in his pocket. Then a raccoon came out from behind a tree. "I heard that you were looking for a button," he said. "Here's one that I just found." "That is not my button," wailed Toad. "That button is square. My button was round." Toad put the square button in his pocket. Frog and Toad went back to the river and looked for the button in the mud. "Oh, here's your button," said Frog. "That is not my button," shouted Toad. "That button is thin. My button was thick." Toad put the thin button in his pocket, but now he was very angry. He jumped up and down and screamed, "The whole world is covered with buttons, and not one of them is mine." Toad ran home and slammed the door. And there, on the floor, he saw his white, 4-holed, big, round, thick button. "Oh," said Toad. "It was here the whole time. What a lot of trouble I have made for Frog." So Toad took all of the buttons out of his pocket. He took his sewing box down from the shelf. And Toad proceeded to sew all the buttons all over his jacket. And the next day, Toad gave his jacket to Frog. Frog thought it was beautiful. He put it on and jumped for joy. None of the buttons fell off because Toad had sewed them on very well. And that does our story for today. Thank you for joining us. You can find us on YouTube at Stories for Kids. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.